Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Power Law Investor. Today is November 5th, 2024, Tuesday, election day in the United States. And we are going to be taking a look at the DCA that we've been doing, $100 every day into Power Law following assets. Again, this is not financial advice, this is only for informational purposes. Today, as we prepare this, or as I prepare this video, Bitcoin is just below 68,000 and Kaspa is trading just below 11 cents. Now, as a quick review, the power law is simply the plotting of the price and the time in log space versus linear space. And in this case, it's the, the blue line. And we find that there is a strong trend line represented by this red line through the blue, connecting the blue together. And it has a very good R squared fit, which means that a high degree of the variation, 95.61% of the variation in the price in the log plane, is explained by this red line shooting through it. And then when we convert this into linear space, we end up with a graph that looks like this. The straight lines have become curved. And assuming that the future is like the past, we are able to make some predictions on what the expected price action is going to be like. Now, this is a trend line, so it is the average. It may be above that, it may be below that, but generally it's going to follow that over a long enough period of time. And that period of time for Bitcoin is in the multiple of years, about 4 years. But generally, we have a pretty good idea of where it's going to be, and that allows us to come up with some predictions. So based on these calculations, we expect a price of Bitcoin in a year's time to be about 113K. It's likely going to be a lot more than that just because of the nature of the cycles of Bitcoin, and it often shoots up above the trend line, but that is kind of what we're expecting. All right. So again, Bitcoin and Kaspa are the only two cryptos that have an R squared of greater than 0.9, which means 90% of the variation is explained by the trend line. And so here is the line for Kaspa, as you can also see. So we'll be talking today about some of the interesting price action that we've been seeing in both Bitcoin and Kaspa, but let's just look at where we are in our spreadsheet right now. Essentially, the way the spreadsheet works is that there allows of the way the spreadsheet works, or the way that this algorithm that I've developed works, it looks into the returns expected by Kaspa, the returns expected by Bitcoin, and then looks by how reliably we can expect those returns, given that the length of time that Kaspa has been around is a lot less than the amount of time that Bitcoin has been around. So on this graph, for example, we have over 5,000 days of data for Bitcoin, but we have less than 1,000 days of data for Kaspa. So we're investing $100 based on this allocation, and currently based on the expected Kaspa return following the simple power law, we expect a return of over 700% with a current price of just above 10 cents. This is not the same as what was in the price right now, because in the algorithm, the price gets updated just once a day. And for Bitcoin, we have an expected return of about 66%, which is also quite fantastic. And the algorithm is keeping 20% in cash to be deployed in opportunities where the price dips below that trend line, and we feel it's a great opportunity to buy. So let's look at how we've been doing so far. We started on the 19th of August, and we've been around running for about 80 days. And we've purchased just over 0.025 of Bitcoin. And because we've been DCAing, and the average price is around $62,000. And similarly for Kaspa, not only we were able to purchase about whatever the daily percentage happens to be, but the average price that we paid for Kaspa is about 12.4 cents, right? And the reason why that has been pushed down is because there were a number of limit orders. Let me just drag this up here so we can see it more clearly. A number of limit orders that triggered that 20% of cash that we have from the algorithm over here at different buy points. So we bought some at 14 and just about 14 cents, 13 cents, 12 cents, and 11.5 cents, and finally at 10.5 cents, right? So we deployed a whole bunch of cash and capital at that point. So I think at this point, the amount of cash available should be pretty much zero. Let me just adjust this here because we've used all the available cash. So based on that, we are still below. We have a loss of about 18%, which in crypto terms is not that huge. So we're still below water, but the average price of Kaspa has been pulled down quite significantly. And most of the profits have come from the Bitcoin side of things because Bitcoin is now trading at about 67, 70,000, and our average price was 62. And Kaspa, our average price was about 12.5 cents, whereas now it's trading just about 10.5 cents. Okay, of course, there's a lot of daily variation, but you kind of get the idea. So, what is really happening in the market, and what do I think are the things that we have to be careful for? So let's start off with where Bitcoin is, right? The way this model works, or the way that I visualize this, is Bitcoin is sort of the gravitational field, the big planet or the sun that's pulling all the other altcoins with it. If Bitcoin drops down, then all the other altcoins will, then all the other coins will be pulled down with it. And right now, if we look at the market, we can see that relative to, I have that particular chart here, but the altcoin market relative to Bitcoin has been dropping down. So you can see that if you plot what's happening, if you take Bitcoin on the, if you take the altcoin crypto cap on the numerator and the Bitcoin in the denominator, you'll see that that has been, as the denominator gets bigger, you end up going lower and lower. And the question then becomes is, do we expect Bitcoin to go up or Bitcoin to go down? Now, if we look at this chart over here, I haven't got the minus 50 trend lines, etc. here, but we are trading below the trend line. And there is a distinct possibility that given what's happening geopolitically, the political uncertainty that takes place, and also the fact that we haven't really had quantitative easing kick in as yet, we may end up getting a dip on the Bitcoin side of things. Then again, we may also have an acceleration. No one knows. And if anyone tells you that we might, they know for sure it's going down or there's some technical analysis, it's just an opinion. Or maybe they're looking at what's happened in the past and we'll see what happens in the future, right? So with Bitcoin, we've got these 4-year cycles, and typically around this time in Q4 of the year of the halving, things start taking off. But we don't know if that's going to happen at this time because having enough liquidity in the markets is important. And right now, that liquidity isn't necessarily kicked in full gear. And given how volatile crypto is in general, you can't really be sure whether it's going to be going up or down. So the only way really to handle that is by following this dollar cost averaging technique of putting $100 in. That's the amount I've been using, and then figuring out which one of them, a certain percentage you buy every day. And if you feel the prices drop down way below the trend line, then we buy some more. So that's what's going to happen in Bitcoin. But the reason we want to be careful about that is we just don't know where it's going to go. And if it does go down, it's going to pull the entire market down with it. So it's important to have some cash in reserve and also not decide to go all in at this point because we never know what could be happening. On the other side, let's look at what's happening with Kaspa. And this is something that's been really interesting, is that if you look at this in the log plane, you see it's finally taken a drop down below here. And it's gone quite significantly lower. And we've been struggling, and I've been struggling to try and understand what is exactly is going on. And I've made a few videos on whether I think the power law is broken or what's happening. Now, if we look at it in this structure over here, you can see that there's a big drop. But if you look at the entirety, it's still following this R squared line with a great degree of precision. But in a sense, this could be misleading because really what we're interested in is what's happening right around now, not, what's happened a year ago or 2 years ago should matter a lot less to us. So after digging in some research and doing some calculations, I think I have a pretty good idea of what's going on. And a lot of this, as I had alluded to earlier, has been the issues with KRC20. Okay. And what's happening with KRC20 is, let me give you a quick explanation of how Kaspa is generated. The miners are solving mathematical equations, and when they solve a mathematical equation, they get a block reward, and the block reward also contains a list of the transactions that have taken place. And there's one block that's produced every second, okay? And when that happens, the miner gets a reward. And right now that reward is about 82 Kaspa. So if I'm a miner, I'm running my computer, I'm using some electricity on it, I'm the one who solves this mathematical situation, and I get 82 Kaspa. That's great. But what also happens is, as a miner, I also get the rewards that people pay, those small fees for transacting Kaspa from one address to another. Now, what's happened is that the amount of rewards gets diminished every month and goes down lower and lower over time. And the calculation also becomes more and more complicated at some rate, right? But these transactions that are taking place, they can be a significant source relative to the block rewards. And this is what I want to show you in this chart over here. This was on my X channel, so you'll find a reference down in the description of this video. In the orange line, let me make this a little bigger. In the orange line, you're seeing what are the mining rewards, and they go down every month. And this is an approximation. And this should be Kaspa transaction rewards. Right, let me actually make this clear. Here's the corrected graphic so we can look at it. These are the mining rewards, but these blue peaks are the transaction fees. So September 15th, when KRC20 launched, and then around October 20th, you had a huge spike in the number of fees. And if you go to the chart that actually I got this from Kaspalytics, you can see typically the amount of fees that you have over here is 5K. It's a really small amount, right? 1K, 2K, 5K, something like that. But then it shoots to 21 million on September 15th. And then it shoots to, again, almost 25 million, 24.5 million on October 22nd. So just as a rough estimation, you're getting about 7 million Kaspa in block rewards a day. But then you've added almost 3.5 times that amount in terms of transaction fees. So what that means that the miners all of a sudden have about, instead of 1 day's worth to sell, they have 4 days worth to sell, right? And so that's what's kind of happening over here with this price action. As you can see, it starts going down. Let's look at this again here. So you can see the black line, which is the price, that starts going down, right? Because all of a sudden the amount of supply has gotten a lot bigger. And now these rewards that you get from the transactions are not stable, right? Most of the time they're dropping down here to about maybe 1 million, maybe 3.5 million, etc., right? But they're not huge, not like these spikes. But it basically means that there is an additional supply of Kaspa that has entered the market. And because of that, the supply-demand dynamic, which determined the price, which also determined the power law, has now changed because there's a persistently new supply coming in. Now, we don't know what the exact number of this averaged over time would be, but I'd say something like about 3 to 3.5 million Kaspa. So if we overestimate it, it says we normally get about $7 million Kaspa through mining rewards, but now we're having 3.5 additional, so a total of 10.5 million. So if you assume that the demand is stable and do some calculations, roughly the price should drop down by a third, right? So before all the KRC20 started, you were around 17, 18 cents. Now, if you take a third out of that, you get somewhere around 12 cents, a little bit lower to 11.5 cents or so. And if you look at what the price is right now, it's around that region, okay? So what that means is, taking a step back, as I've been, developing this power law for Kaspa. But now at this point, around this point over here, or if you go to this graph, around September 15th, there was an increase in supply that was taking place. Okay, so that means that the power law is going to have to be revised. Does that mean that the power law is broken? No. What I think is going to happen is that we're going to have a step down, and then we're going to continue along with that power law. And I'm working on figuring out some ways to visually represent that and also mathematically represent that I'll be sure to share with you. But do sign up for my X and also for my website to get notified when the new information does come out. But in the meantime, it's important not to panic and say, oh my God, the power law is broken. What it's going to look like roughly is there'll be another curve that sort of takes off from around this point, right? Because we've increased the supply. And if we think about it, If the supply has gone up about 50%, we're basically going to take about a third drop in price and then start following with a line that's going to be pretty parallel to this existing curved orange line. So I would not panic. I would be prepared for having for two things. One is that the price will go up slowly over time, again, following the power law, which is pretty fast. So I still expect, 500% plus returns in a year's time, but also increased volatility. And by volatility, I mean that the price is going to move around a lot because whenever we have a jump in KRC20 issuance, the fees will go up and the price will be pulled down. So if you look at that in a log scale over here, you can see how those transactions are moving around every day and how they're produced, right? So anytime there's a spike, the miners have a lot more Kaspa, they decide to get rid of it, it overwhelms the demand, and the price will go down. So my initial thoughts are that we should be assuming a lot more volatility to be taking place. And so it's, again, difficult to improve on the DCA, but we might want to place some more limit orders because we're going to get some spikes downward too, some wicks that are going to hit some interesting levels. So right now, about 10.5, 10.1, it almost reached 10 cents. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point it hit 9 cents when there's a lot of panic in the market and there's a lot of KRC20 tokens that are being traded around. But we'll keep an eye on it. I don't think there's a way to benefit from that right now, and I'm still thinking through how I can share with you guys what different strategies might be. But for now, if the strategy remains unchanged, I continue to invest in because I think over the longer term, this is going to pay off quite handsomely. And there's no reason to panic. For those of us who thought that, oh, maybe this is all broken, the power law. No, it's just been shifted down, but the growth is going to continue. So I hope you found this to be informative. If you have any questions or follow-up, please put them in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you get informed when a new video pops in. Ciao, ciao, and see you guys soon.